Hey, JK here. I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're back here for day 2 of 30 teams in 30 days. We're going to be traveling to Sacramento to talk about the team formerly known as the Oakland Athletics. This year, the Athletics will be moving from the Oakland Coliseum to Sutter's Health Park in Sacramento, California, home of the Sacramento River Cats, a AAA affiliate of the San Francisco Giants. The field definitely does differ and is absolutely going to be beneficial for left-handed hitters. So make sure you're paying attention to hear those left-handed hitters in this lineup moving forward. The Oakland Athletics in 2024 won 69 games, nice, and lost 93, which is good for 4th in the AL West. We're talking about this team, you absolutely have to mention the two cornerstones, J.J. Bleday and Brent Rooker. Both of them absolutely took steps forward in this past year. They also have a ton of young talent, and I'm excited because I have been an Athletics fan for quite a while. My favorite players, Yoenis Cespedes, and also Josh Donaldson started here. Well, Donaldson was traded from the Cubs, and he was a catcher, and then moved to third base. But that's not the important part right now. They were my favorite players, and they started out in Oakland. They became stars in Oakland, and then they were traded away. They have a ton of young talent on this team, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the hitters adjust from playing at the Coliseum to playing at Sutter's Health Park, and how the pitchers are going to continue to develop as they did build off some good positive notes from last year. Speaking of the new home for the Athletics over the next few years, the dimensions do match the Coliseum in left field and center field up to about 10 feet. However, right field goes from 388 at the Coliseum to 325. So here's where you want to look at those lefties. Seth Brown, J.J. Bleday, Lawrence Butler, and Tyler Soderstrom will absolutely be people you want to look at because they improved from their 2023 seasons, made leaps and bounds and strides and improvements in 2024, and should only continue to develop here in 2025. I'm going to be trying to target them in my drafts, so I suggest you do as well, especially with the confines, if you want to call it that, of right field not being at all that much of an issue, especially when you have power hitters like we named before. When we talk about the improvement from 23 to 24 for this Athletics team, you have to mention J.J. Bleday. He led the team in at-bats, walks, doubles, and triples in 24, while Zach Geloff, being in his first full year at the major league level, led the team in stolen bases and strikeouts. Now, the man of the hour, the person who absolutely made a name for himself, Mr. Brent Rooker. He led the team in total bases, at-bats, home runs, RBIs, on-base percentage, batting average, on-base plus slugging, and slugging. As we've mentioned the young talent on this team multiple times, let's start by talking about Zach Geloff. He had about half the season at the major league level in 23, and people took notice. He wanted to come out and do better in 2024, and that didn't happen. He doubled the number of games he had at the major league level in 24. However, his stats did not match. In just over 220 more at-bats, Geloff only added 30 more hits, 20 more runs, 17 RBIs, and managed to drop his batting average more than 50 points. Went from 267 to 211. Another alarming stat is that he only added 12 walks while adding 106 strikeouts. In fact, 188 on the year for him puts him at 4th most in the major leagues. He definitely has the power. He's definitely got the speed with 20 plus stolen bases, but he's going to have to be patient. Only 12 more walks in 220 plus at-bats while adding 106 strikeouts is not the way you want to make a name for yourself. Unlike Geloff, Lawrence Butler tripled the number of games he played in 24 and made sure those numbers went even higher than what was projected. In 42 games at the major league level in 23, he had 4 home runs and 10 RBIs, no stolen bases. In 24, he played 125 games at the major league level. He had 22 home runs, 57 RBIs, and 18 stolen bases. With 2020 potential, there's absolutely no reason this man should not lead off and hit in front of the likes of J.J. Bleday, Brent Rooker, and Shea Langoliers. Speaking of Shea Langoliers, he has become one of the top, although underrated, defensive power backstops in Major League Baseball. This year, he faces less competition as Tyler Soderstrom will be moving from catcher to first and battling Seth Brown out. Definitely feel like Soderstrom's going to win that battle, but I also feel like Seth Brown is going to play a little bit of a role, giving some guys some time off, because Brent Rooker is relegated to DH, at least for the time being. He's recovering from an injury, and for my fantasy team's purposes and my eligibility, I hope he does end up still playing in the outfield. Move from catcher to first is going to help Soderstrom stay on the field a little bit more. Instead of having to crouch down and play that grueling position at catcher, he's going to be able to stretch his legs out and improve on his numbers from 24, because he had 9 home runs and 26 RBIs, hitting just under 235. And I'm sure Soderstrom will still catch at least a few games in order to give Shea Langoliers a little bit of a break. I know we talked about Logan O'Hoppe yesterday with the Angels, and we talked about his pop time. Now we're going to talk about Langoliers. Langoliers has a pop time of 1.91. And Logan O'Hoppe's was 2.02. So that's a tenth of a second faster. Why does that make a difference? Shea Langoliers is in the 91st percentile for catching base stealers, whereas Logan O'Hoppe is in the 55th percentile. That tenth of a second makes the world of difference, especially when someone is trying to get into scoring position to win a game. Base stealers are absolutely more likely to run on Logan O'Hoppe than they are Shea Langoliers. In order for Shea Langoliers to get those outs at second, he has to have someone to throw to, right? Well, shortstop Jacob Wilson might be one of those guys this upcoming year. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Jacob Wilson this year, especially being a first-round draft pick. However, it does seem as though he has a very long leash because there is no competition behind him. Someone who was a major disappointment this past year for me, and actually was a keeper for me in one of my leagues, was Esteury Ruiz. I really thought the 23's 67 stolen bases were just the tip of the iceberg for Ruiz because of the expanded bases. I thought for sure he would be challenging 80, even 90. However, he was a keeper for me and was not even in the opening day lineup for 24. What a freaking waste. He was relegated to only 28 games, and yeah, I wish he'd have been doing as well as Trout did in those 20-plus games, but he was hitting 200. He was eventually demoted to the minors and then hit the IL for a surgery. I really hope that he is able to come back and make a name for himself. He reminds me of John Berti. A few years ago, he had like 40 or 50 stolen bases and then did absolutely nothing the next year. So Ruiz did the exact same thing to me. I'm really hoping that my investment in him, while it might be a year late, does come to fruition, because I will probably target him, if possible, in some of my much later rounds. Speaking of investments, the Athletics absolutely put some investment in their pitching rotation. From the past few years, including this year, they are assembling a very good bullpen and a rotation that could very well potentially get them to 500. Before we get to some of the names, we're going to talk about the 3 major contributors in the 2024 season. J.P. Sears led the team in everything, but he was the only person to hit the 162 inning pitched lineup. There was one guy, Mitch Spence, who fell just about 9 innings short, but J.P. Sears was the guy. J.P. Sears was also a former Yankee, so that's probably why he's so good. The holds leader was Mr. Austin Adams, and the saves leader was flamethrower Mason Miller. Despite more losses than wins, I really do like 2 young pitchers in this rotation, Joey Estes and Mitch Spence. Those 2 guys did have more losses than wins, like I talked about before, and they also both gave up quite a few earned runs. They both also gave up 20-plus home runs, which that's not great. However, Joey Estes threw 20 less innings and still gave up 20 home runs, so that's really not good. I'm really hoping that these guys can bounce back, continue to develop, and have some carryover into 2025, because they are very young, both I think 23 or 25, and they are going to be able to produce, especially with some of the veteran presence that was brought in to make this rotation that much better. Another young pitcher in this rotation, Osvaldo Bido. He started 9 games last year, had 4 quality starts, had an ERA of 3.41 and a whip of 1.09. He also struck out just as many batters as innings he threw, which was 63. So I'm really excited for what he is going to have to offer, because this man, along with the veteran presence they brought in, Severino and Jeffrey Springs, along with J.P. Sears, Mitch Spence, and Joey Estes, this could be a very young, talented, underrated, sneaky good rotational piece. As much as I want to talk about the rotation being good and having potential, this bullpen is absolutely one of the reasons why they won half the games they did, and gives them a reason to feel confident having the lead going into the later innings. It doesn't hurt to have Mason Miller, the flamethrower with triple-digit numbers on the radar gun, being your closer, but the bridge from starting pitcher to the closer was by far, in my opinion, one of the best in the game. Now, you wouldn't think of it after losing almost 100 games, but between Mr. McFarland, Mr. Adams, Mr. Alexander, and Mr. Ursedge, all of these guys had at least 10 holds, and 3 of them had at least 10 plus Ks per 9 innings. So not only are they limiting runs by keeping their ERA at 3.81 or below, in Mr. Scott Alexander's case, he had it at 2.56. All of them were able to get the outs when they were needed. Very few blown saves for this Athletics team, but I am excited to see what they're going to be doing, as unfortunately some of their pieces did leave. Austin Adams was the main one, like we talked about. He led the team in holds, but only by 3. Ursedge came in and had 19, so there's not a whole lot of drop-off. And in the offseason, the Athletics made some moves to bring some guys in to shore up that bullpen. 2 of those pieces they added are Jose Leclerc and Dan Floro. Neither of them are the sexiest names, but they are experienced, and they were both former closers. Leclerc also was an opener at times, but he's a little chaotic. I like the idea of both of those guys adding to the bullpen that they have. They're not going to replace Austin Adams, but they are definitely going to help his loss. The Athletics also bolstered the pitching rotation, like we had mentioned before, with Luis Severino and Jeffrey Springs. Severino was a former Yankee, and Springs is another former AL East opponent with the Rays. Both those guys are going to be able to help this rotation, not only with experience, but talent. They have the track record to help this team get to 500. I think if a 10-win Luis Severino, a 10-win Jeffrey Springs, and a 30-save Mason Miller is able to come from this pitching rotation, along with the same carryover numbers from Blade, from Rooker, with improvement from those numbers for Zach Geloff, and finally, Mr. Lawrence Butler doing his thing, this is a 500 easy team. Don't know if they're pushing for wild card, but they will be a 500 team, mark my words. I'm going to go ahead and put money on this, that the Athletics are going to be a 500 or better team. With these players, with their track record, and with the development, I really think the Athletics are going to push for potentially a wild card. Not going to put money on that one, but they're going to be 500, and they're going to be fun and exciting to watch in whatever stadium they're in. Day 2 is out of the way. We're moving to day 3 as we're going to be traveling to Texas to talk about the Texas Rangers. They had a little bit of a postseason hangover this past year, but do not tell Corey Seager and Adolis Garcia that, because they are absolutely putting up crazy numbers. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow for day 3 of 30 Teams in 30 Days. This is J-Cake, and I want to thank you for sharing part of your day with me.